Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
In today's episode 158 of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/2 for 1 studios, the best place to consume the content. And if you didn't know, and you probably did, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics. Look at it, 4047. We're sponsored by YouTube now.
They sponsor us by letting us have a channel.
Yeah. Screw you, Mr. Beast. So Kapow Comics located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year. Kapow. It's like I could feel myself doing it, and then I was like, oh, you're kind of going slower than normal, like in a good way. Like you are articulating your words a little bit better, and then I got in my own head, and then I started messing up. So that's just what happens.
You do sound a little under the weather. Are you like
I am,
sinusy kind of stuff? So you can blame it on that because
that's what happened to everyone. The sinus. The last 3 days I've not felt great. It's like I feel like I'm on the verge of being sick every day. It's like I'm not. Yeah. My body's like fighting it for some reason.
That
I'm
feeling.
like, just let it happen so I can.
Yep. The pollen is out and killing me, so I get it.
Yeah, I'm not having a great time. Anyway, everyone, episode 158, we are talking about the Super Mario Brothers the movie and by Illumination. And so just a quick backstory on me. I grew up obviously on Super Mario. My mom had the Super Nintendo before I was born, and I kind of inherited that, and then I got the N64, and so my go-to answer always is, what's my favorite game of all time? And I always say Super Mario 64.
Sure.
Just because I think it's like a perfect game and for what it is, and X, Y, and Z. Best game of all time? Maybe not, but also it's maybe my favorite though. And I'm a huge Mario fan. I've played all the mainline games. I'm a huge Mario Kart guy. I challenge anyone to a game, and if you can beat me, then I'll give you everything I own. And I also everything, Daniel. I'll give you a Super Smash. We have a Super Smash tournament for Christmas every year with my friends, and so it's like it's always been a big part of my life.
Sure.
Even the old OG John Leguizamo's Bob Hopkins Super Mario Brothers movie with Dennis Hopper, even that one. I had some love for that as a kid too, I all about Mario, and I only buy the next Nintendo system for when the next mainline Mario Kart Smash comes out. Once I get those two, I'm like, well, I did it. Like, I got to wait 7 more years now until I buy another Nintendo system or buy another game. But they typically last forever because they're great party games, right? So when they would announce this movie, I was like, oh, cool. I'm in, Illumination. They do great animation. I'm not a huge Despicable Me fan. I've never seen Sing 1 or 2. I've never seen The Secret Life of Pets. So I don't really have a huge connection to them.
Despicable Me was all right. I think that's the only one I've seen though.
I think I've seen the first 2. I don't think I've seen the third one. I may have seen Minions. I've seen pieces of Rise of Gru. So anyway, not like thrilled by that, but also wasn't upset by it or anything. And so then the first trailer dropped, and I was kind of like, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about Chris Pratt being the voice of Mario. And I just couldn't really get into it. He even looked slightly different than what I thought he should look like. And I kind of thought why change it? Like he's been the same. Like he's perfect. He's perfect. He's already an animated character. Like why do this? But watching the movie and just seeing the trailers and kind of seeing the references, I gotta say that I know I'm gonna be different camp than you on this. We've kind of talked a little bit previously, but I had a great time with it. I think that as far as Mario doesn't have a story, it did enough for me to kind of give something, to give me the set pieces, to give me the music and the references, the Mario Kart. And, it's something I never really even thought of 5 years ago that I would really get, because Nintendo's kind of really stingy with their stuff, and rightfully so. They're really protecting their IP. But if a movie can make me cry or laugh, whatever, and that at the very end, it was so cool. The ending, spoilers, everybody. The ending was so cool. I cried, and I was like, "That's all I
Mm.
needed. I got it." To me, it's
What
cool
part of the
enough.
ending?
I mean, when they get the superstar,
Oh, okay,
it's coming.
okay.
It's
Yeah,
it's
okay.
it's like it's like an anime movie
Yeah,
moment, right? And
absolutely. Yeah, right.
yeah, and so like to me, that's up my alley, 110%. And
Sure.
so I was just like getting emotional because how cool it was, and it made me cry. So I'm like, oh, well, it did it. Top 5 of the year so far, So
Sure.
um, that's how I judge movies, right?
Sure.
So I had a great time with it. I understand if people didn't, if it's not their cup of tea, but the also money talks, and I think people are at least liking it so far. The general audience is, maybe
Sure.
not critics. So what's your perspective on it?
Yeah, so I kind of come opposite of you, even just upbringing wise. I was not a Mario kid. I had like Super Mario Land 3 on the Game Boy Advance, like when they ported it. I had that,
Yeah, me
and I
too.
had
Me
and I
too.
had tried Super Mario 64, but I was Ocarina of Time kid, and
Sure.
I even at that age, it was just if it doesn't have a story, I'm not really interested, and so I played Mario 64, but just it would just it wasn't my jam. It just wasn't the kind of game I wanted to play. I don't get the satisfaction from hitting the perfect jump as much as like maybe other people do. And so I'm never really like, and I realize I'm on the outlier there. I mean, like Mario is the most recognizable, popular, one of the oldest, video game mascot characters that have ever existed and probably will continue to be the most recognizable forever. You know what I mean? He's icon. He is video games. Like, it's in the
Yeah.
same way that for a period when people used to be like, oh, you're playing the Halos, and like Halo was just a
Yeah.
euphemism for video game. Before that, it was Mario. Are you going to play your Mario game? But if you said that, people would mean any video game at all, right? Because that's how
Right.
synonymous the idea of Mario in video games was. So yeah, I was coming into it obviously excited because it looked fun and I like Nintendo, and I was taking my kid to it and he was very excited. He's played more Mario than me. He's like beat Super Mario 3D World already, and I never
Great
even
game.
beat Mario Land 3. I don't think on the GBA. And so anyway, yeah, going into it, like I think it was a fun movie. It was good. It was well animated. The animation was spectacular. I thought the set pieces were all great, and they tied in lots of references. I mean, the score was just like a referential score. I felt like every time the score was on, like they would just be hearing little things here and there, whether it's like the opening theme of like when you get to, there was some Nintendo 64 like specific score references and stuff like that I recognized. And yeah, like I said, like I think to your point, it accomplished what they wanted it to accomplish. It started a Super Mario world universe essentially with this movie. I mean, they explored very like other worlds within the world. I mean, it was very much like setting up a universe. It felt like an MCU type thing that they can now do dozens of spin-offs from characters that were in that movie into their own thing or own series or whatever it is, right? But I do feel like that, like story wise, and if I'm just looking at it as a filmmaker, as a writer, I do feel like the story was negligible at best, almost, I would say. Like in terms of like characters, arcs, those tying into like what's the action that's happening in the movie, in terms of characters like changing throughout the movie, and that like changing their fate, and like character growth being tied to plot, being tied to like the themes and where we get there. I mean, I guess you could say the theme is, I mean, Mario and Luigi, they repeated that like if we're together, it'll always be okay. I don't even remember what the exact phrasing was, but it's like, if we're together, nothing can stop us, or something like that. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Sure.
it's like,
Family triumphs
okay,
all,
but that
friendship
has
triumphs
nothing
all,
to
I
do with
guess.
anything that happened in the movie. You know what I mean? Like, and like to your point, it is the most profitable animation, like opening, period of an animation film of all time, right? Like it has the biggest box off opening
Right.
for any animation. And so like, does it matter? not to the executives that made this movie. It doesn't. It accomplished like all their goals, and it set up more movies. It set up more, potential income. I mean, the amount of merchandising I'm sure that's coming off just this movie alone is ridiculous. And so it's just one of those things. I'm like, yeah, that was good. And I think, yes, if I had been a Super Mario fanboy and like he had been like integral to like kind of my childhood, I probably would have maybe noticed some of these things less, right? And
Sure.
I recognize the references. They just didn't mean a lot to me, if that makes sense.
Right.
And they were cute. They were fun. Sometimes they were clever. Sometimes they weren't. And I think just overall, I'm just like, I don't know. I guess to me, it accomplished what they wanted. I guess maybe this is like the optimist writer in me. I think it could have been both. I think it could have done everything they wanted to do financially, commercially, referentially, and told a good story. And I just feel like that just makes me a little unsatisfied because I'm just like, well, but you could have, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You don't care. You accomplished your goals. It's fine. But like, to me, it's just as the artistic side of me goes, well, okay, we didn't quite reach our potential here.
I think that everything you're saying is 100% valid. And I see that, and I see that like I do believe there is a world where it's both. I think also that this kind of reminds me, and I could be wrong. Well, first of all, two things. I think the reason why Mario games are so good, and like even like Mario Kart and Smash and those kind of things, and what makes them kind of different than even Zelda, they all and Metroid and those kind of things, they all share the similarity that like they're almost always super polished, right? And they're just like they're
innovative,
always great,
breaking new grounds, like in terms of like.
Well, they're great games. What I'm saying? Like it's like if you look at if you look at a movie, like movies started out as moving pictures, right? And then we added score and color,
right,
and all these different things, right? And I feel like Mario is like it's the best version of what it's like the most simplistic, purest form of a game. Like it's something you play that's like mechanically interesting and fun, and but it doesn't have it doesn't have the score is great too, but it's not like emotionally trying to push you somewhere. The score, I think the score is trying to push the action, right? It's trying to push the world and the funness, versus like The Last of Us, where we have character beats and a score that's and production design. Like you have piranhas and fish, and sometimes he wears a cat suit, sometimes he wears a fire suit. What I mean? Like it's different, right? And so I think I think making a Zelda movie would be easier, or a Metroid movie, because those worlds feel like they feel consistent, and I feel like, and there's also, there's
baked in story,
stories,
there's lore,
there's baked in story. And so that's part of my point, but I'm not saying it's impossible, but I just have a feeling also just for the filmmakers, this kind of reminds me, and I think you've talked about this, I may have talked about this with John a little bit too, but working on like the Pokemon movie, where it's like you have an American company and then you have like a Japanese company protecting their IP. And we do know like Shigeru Miyamoto, like he was very upset by the live action movie in the early 90s. And that's why they haven't made anything since, because it like tarnished like it destroyed the brand. It didn't destroy it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think like, I can't imagine the conversations and just the logistics of trying to push the needle creatively of like even giving him a family. What I'm saying? Like that seems like basic. Oh, of course Mario would have a dad. That's never been a thing ever in any of the games in the 30 years. And I can only imagine how many conference calls they had about what the dad looks like alone, or what I'm saying? Like I feel like thinking about all that, I think it's amazing we got the movie we got. That doesn't excuse it at all. I think that there's a world where we got both, but I also think like it's probably super hard to make this movie on a plot level. And
I mean, I think you're absolutely right.
Like logistically,
Yeah, no, I mean, like you're right. I mean, you're having to create lore. I mean, you're having to give him a family and give him personalities and give him an upbringing, which is like, I guess him and Luigi are part of this giant Italian family in New York. They've got kind of a typical,
which I loved,
hard-nosed Italian father. I mean, like, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was just, you're right to say that, like, I did feel like at times that, like, yeah, this movie was made to be as massively, as wide appealing as possible, almost.
Yep.
Like
It was.
it was made so that they're as much as they would not offend any person that has any affiliation with Mario, right? They just wanted to
100%.
like, it's not gonna like give him a tragic backstory that like, completely changes people's views or something like that. And I get it. I get that from like, oh, we're trying to protect the IP. We just want to make something that feels like the games in spirit, that, and again, like that we can continue. I mean, I think we're in for another like probably 10 Mario Nintendo World movies over the next like 15 years, probably at least.
Which I think is exciting. I think that is. I think it's kind of like Iron Man in the fact that there's Iron Man's, granted it's a little different. There's some great character stuff in Iron Man, but we're not getting to like the great storytelling that we got in like the Winter Soldier, and I could be even just like, we could even say something like, I don't know, The Dark Knight. We could say like Batman '89 versus The Dark Knight, right? They had to get a few out before they could get to that place. I think Zelda, even Metro, maybe not Metroid, but maybe Metroid. I think all those this opens the door for that. And it was like they had to be kind of safer, I feel like, to kind of get us to maybe things that are more nuanced and to give us. And I think I can see a universe where we get a Super Smash Brothers movie. And it's
absolutely.
like
that's absolutely. I mean, like that is their Avengers. That's what's going to build to. I mean, I would fully assume that we're eventually going to get basically standalone movies for Zelda, Metroid, like all these things, and that would seem to be the logical conclusion to all of that. Yes, and again, I agree. That's exciting. I mean, like if they, and again, it's exciting. It's exciting to me. But what doesn't excite me about it is parts of this movie that I'm like, okay, but like if it's not, I hope it raises the bar, right? Like, yes, I want to see that. And even if they just like continue with the same standards, like don't change anything, it worked, kind of thing. I'll still go see it because I do have a lot of personal affiliation with Smash Bros. Like as an IP, that was a huge game for me as a kid. And so like, and Zelda and probably Metroid, just because I didn't play a lot of them, but I think Samus is super cool and I like the world of it. And I think it would probably make a badass movie.
idea.
Hopefully it's
Iron Man in space,
not too dumbed down, like made for kids kind of thing. But Samus always felt like a little bit of an older game. It's harder, it's darker.
It does.
It's not for 5 and 6 year olds like Mario can be.
And Zelda can get very dark too in a lot of games.
It is. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like there's entire like deity mythos to like the Zelda stuff and like multiple timelines and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, especially like Majora's Mask and even like Twilight Princess are very dark in theme and in tone. It's a very much so. I would see, even parts of Breath of the Wild are. But yeah, so you're right. Like it is this thing of like, yeah, maybe they needed to make the safe bet to reassure like all the investors, like, look how much money is in this. We just need to keep going, kind of thing. I don't know. I do agree. It does feel like, a Japanese presence was very active in the producing of this movie, just in terms of like those kinds of things, right? Like trying to just be as massively appealable as possible. Like there's almost elements of anime to the story in how lightly the story matters compared to like everything else that's going on, the art style, the action, the all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I just think it's like, I enjoyed it.
I hear you.
I'm excited for the future, but like with a caveat of like, because to me, like if I get into details, like Peach was not a character at all in this movie. She was like a plot device that just kind of was there to like train Mario and later be stolen by Bowser to have like a MacGuffin essentially. Right. And so like, I want more from that. Like, I don't want a Zelda version of that. You know what I mean? I mean, like there's a version of you make a Zelda movie where Zelda's just that kind of character that's no depth, that doesn't seem to have any other desires other than to like defeat the big bad. And like, that's the extent of her character. yeah. So all that to say is like, I want more. I'm ready for more. This was like my son, my 8-year-old loved it, and I think
Hmm.
loved just the experience of going to the theater too. And so like, I'm probably gonna be in the theater for pretty much all the rest of them day one or very close to it with my son. You know what I mean? Even if I wasn't
Right.
going to go. And so yeah, like you said, it's well made, like it's polished to hell, right? Um,
You know, it is. Yeah, the animation's crazy.
yeah, it really, I mean, like I was like noticing at times like the details and like the stitching of Mario's shirt. You know what I mean? It was pretty wild. Yeah.
No, it was. Yeah. I mean, it also makes you kind of like, man, I wish we could have a Mario game that looked like this. Like, you kind of wish they would,
Well,
you know,
at some point it would
do
seem
that.
nonsensical not to have these like paired with each other to some like, I mean, is there going to be a Super Mario Brothers movie, the game, or like the next movie is paired with a game release,
No.
just like kind of The Last of Us did, where like you play the new game and then you get like
Well,
a movie with
I can see
with
that.
light tie-ins kind of thing, like that releases maybe a few months after or before. So you're just kind of like,
I could see some skin situation potentially. I could see that, but
oh yeah, like
um,
amiibos or something. Like you get an amiibo if you go to the, or like, yeah, there's going to be
yeah,
lots of things like that. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, I could totally see that kind of stuff, and just talking about the movie real quick. I mean, the references that we could talk all day long about those. I probably missed half of them. There's probably so
Sure.
many. I feel
Yeah.
stood out to me was like the ringtone is like the GameCube sign
Yeah.
on, which is awesome. And then like so for me, the Super Mario Brothers, like basically the themes. They used to have a cartoon,
Yeah.
um, and that was the theme song for the cartoon as their commercial. That was the opening theme song.
Okay.
Like we're the Mario
Yeah.
Brothers, and like that was the thing. It's like I
Yeah.
have ties to that too, just even with like inside jokes with friends and
Sure.
everything like that. So just seeing that was great. And I think the references are always good. And I will say that throughout the movie, I kind of forgot Chris Pratt was Mario. Like I forgot
Really?
like yeah, I didn't really. I mean, like I was just kind of watching the movie and like, oh yeah, it's Chris Pratt, and like that's oh yeah, that's Charlie Day as Luigi, and I just kind of bought it, and I was like, oh, this is fine. Like I was kind of like a voice for 30 years do it, and he does make a cameo,
Sure.
of course, but I
Who?
just I was okay with it, and it also
Sure.
makes sense because you want Chris Pratt to be the guy on the red carpet and doing funny.
Right. Are you there still? You kind of frozen on
Good
my
with
end.
all that. Do what?
Sorry, you were frozen there for a second. Um,
Could you hear me though?
Not the last part. Repeat the last part. I could hear you up until the very last thing you said.
Oh, I was saying, like, of course you want Chris Pratt
Yeah.
on the red carpet and you want
Right.
someone like that on their Instagram. And obviously he's in Jurassic Park, he's Star
Right.
Lord, and now he's Super Mario. Like he's getting some characters under his belt. He's become like
Yeah.
a star. I mean, like he's become more of a star than like Chris Evans in the fact that like he's leading multiple
Yeah.
franchises
You're right.
and like
Yeah.
no one else in the MCU does that besides him. Not really.
No.
Dave Bautista, funny enough, Dave Bautista is kind of someone else who also goes and he's more of a
Yeah.
character actor. He's not leading franchises.
Right.
But again, Chris Hemsworth tries, but he just none of his movies succeed other
Yeah.
than Extraction, I guess, on Netflix. But
Yeah.
anyway, because you have the Terminal List, you have I think the Tomorrow War is a horrible movie, but you have that on
Sure.
Amazon.
He's been active. He's
It,
been busy.
he has
Last 10
been,
years.
yeah, he has been busy. When you have Arnold Schwarzenegger as your father-in-law, you tend to probably step it up
Yeah.
a notch.
Could be. Yeah. No, yeah, I would say
But
I'm a
yeah,
little on the other side of it. I couldn't really get past his voice most of the movie. Like to me, it
mm,
always kind of felt like a silly Chris Pratt voice the whole time. Like it never sounded too natural. And I
sure,
think a little bit with Charlie Day too, because of just Charlie Day's voice is so iconic to me and like so
right,
recognizable. It's just that no one like he just sounds like his character on It's Always Sunny, just a little less like vulgar,
yeah,
essentially. And yeah, that part was for me. I was just like I couldn't really get past. Like honestly, I thought Jack Black and I guess Anya Taylor-Joy, who did Princess Peach, those didn't bother me as much in some ways, even though Jack Black,
They were great.
Jack Black brought more of himself to the role than anyone else did, right? Like just who Jack Black is.
Jack Black was awesome. He was
the best character in the movie.
And they gave him a song, like a Jack Black speech, and like it can be up for Academy Award now for best best song. You know, I keep saying that. I'm like, maybe
there's no way.
You know,
it will be because there'll be like
there's no way
8 made in a year. There's not a lot of original sung songs.
Sure,
in movies. That
I agree.
So
I will say the one that did bother me was Seth Rogen's. Like, I wasn't just super up on that. I thought the character was good. I thought it was kind of like, oh, this is, well, I can see it be Donkey Kong, right? But just like, to me, it was like he didn't even try. Also maybe he didn't need to in that one, but it was just, I don't know. I was kind of like,
that one bothered me less than Mario, I will say, but I do.
Really?
I was interesting. I guess it makes some sense if you think about like the style of the DK games, but it was just an interesting take, I guess, on who, like, personality wise and everything, like who Donkey Kong is, and like he's this kind of cocky hothead, like young gun with like, you know, no filter, like no whatever. And I thought he was actually pretty decent in the movie. Like he filled his role kind of okay, I guess, at least. The Mario Kart sequence was fun. You know what I mean?
It's there, just that. Oh, hey, how do we get them there? Oh, let's do Mario Kart. You know,
and I think like their battle they had, it's like that kind of epitomizes some of my issues with the movie. It's like, well, Mario wins just because he got the right suit on, because he hit the right block, essentially, right? He gets the Tanooki suit, right? Is that what it was? I think that he wins with. And so it's like, like, you know, that could have been like a defining moment for his character. Like, oh, he used to be insecure, but he just beat a talking donkey, so now he should be, because if he thought of something or he used his plumbing skills in some way. I don't know. It's difficult, right? But like, it is just that thing of like, oh, well, he just got the Tanooki suit, so he won. Okay. And it's just like, that was fun. I liked the set piece. I liked them getting the suits. That was fun, but it didn't pay off like I hoped it would have, I guess.
Sure. I see your point. And that's those things too. Again, you're in those conversations and someone's like, well, what could he win with? And everyone's like, what's the most iconic suit? And everyone goes, the fire suit or the Tanooki suit, probably. Right. And it's like, well, he only got the Tanooki suit, right? You know, like, it's just one of those things like, I see the pull so much, especially if you're like directing this movie and you're like, I can direct a sequence with Mario in the Tanooki suit. You know, like, I get the pull. Absolutely. You know, so it was also interesting having Donkey be able to get the fire suit, like that he could. It was super interesting, and he looked interesting with that. Yeah, and she got it too. I mean, it makes sense, I guess.
Peach makes sense because like there's games where Peach gets powers ups.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of, to me, also the cool part of it was kind of like, oh, like, you know, just doing little things like that you could, it seems so simple and obvious, but you're so ingrained in the games and you hadn't seen this before. You're like, oh, that's like something different.
I would say, like, with their references, they're so clever, right? Like the little places they just insert the music cues, or when I talk about music cues, I'm talking about the score. I do have an issue that, like, they picked every generic needle drop song that's ever been in any kind of like family adventure movie ever, and had every single one of them in this movie. I was just a little bit like, oh wow, like it would be like upset. A song starts and then like literally 2 minutes later a different needle drop with a different, and it was just like, whoa, like just like,
I think there was like 4. There's like 4 needle drops in an hour and a half, which
I don't know. I need to go back. I felt like, there's the No Sleep in Brooklyn song. There's the rah rah. What are they saying? Like thunder. When like, you know that?
I don't know.
But there's that one.
Thunder. You mean AC/DC? Okay. Yeah, Thunderstruck.
Yeah. Thunderstruck. No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Or 2 of them that I can call right. I think there was probably at least 8. I had to guess. That's my guess. I haven't looked it up.
I bet there's 4, maybe 5. Anyway. I get that criticism too. I was actually surprised by it. Of course, if you have Thunderstruck and you have like a Donkey Kong character with like shades on and he's like building your cart just like in the game, I was like, yeah, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. So like I was,
Take On Me, the
rose colors,
Take On
great song. these are all great songs too, though. That's the problem, especially if you're an '80s, like if you like '80s music too. But like, my dad would have loved this movie.
It's great, but it's
But-
like
and my mom-
literally the most like if someone said what's an '80s song, that's going to be 9 out of 10 first. It's just like it's the go-to song to represent like '80s
Yeah.
music.
And guess what?
And I'm just like, yeah.
in a week, in 1 week, it's made $500 million.
Listen,
so
I
that's
get
how,
it. I get it.
you know,
but it's just that
that's-
thing where it feels like let's make this as like we want as many people as possible to get something out of this a little bit. And it's like it's just
Yeah,
that
I
thing
get
when you
it.
make it broad, when you make it try to appeal to everyone, then you eventually start appealing to everyone less. I guess is that kind of thing. Okay, I'm
Sure, I get it. And again, I get it. And yeah, I mean, you know, overall, I think I really enjoyed it. I think it was fun. The animation's great. Oh yeah, real quick. I think it's like an Illumination thing. You don't see Pixar doing needle drops.
It is
Illumination.
yeah.
And every movie they do, it's like, I mean, they made Sing 1 and 2, and like every movie has these needle drops for them, which I do think is a cop out for like, oh, this isn't working. Let's put music behind it. Like I get that.
It's a way to make
100% get that.
things feel like familiar or like kind of like, oh, I like
it's
this
a
song, so
cop-out.
now I like this movie kind of thing. And I do think
Yeah.
it's like it's a
And
cheap trick. It's
and it
kind of
kinda
like
works. Yeah.
it does, but it's like it works.
Yeah.
But it's like it feels a little bit hollow. I'm just like, okay, well, like for one, I do like needle drops, but I especially like them when they're music am not like super familiar with, or music that's just not super mainstream, even in regards to the time, right? Like stuff that's kind of like deep cuts. I feel like a lot of like even like the soundtrack to Baby Driver, right, has a bunch of songs that are like, it has like Tequila in it and like some other songs that we do know, but so many other of them are like really awesome jams that I'd never heard before, but that were like good bands from the 90s or like the, you know, like these different time periods where it's just like, man, this is a great band that was making cool music that like just didn't, you know, that wasn't Michael Jackson or something that just like stole the top of the billboards every year forever.
Yeah. And while I do think that the editing was done, these sequences were made with these songs in mind, it's also different with Baby Driver and Edgar Wright because he's really going on a different level in terms of mixing the action, the blocking, the editing, and the music. Yeah. So it even makes those things stand out even more so than they normally would.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I like the movie a lot. I pre-ordered it the morning I saw the movie before I saw the movie on Blu-ray.
Sure.
I have a feeling that I'm going to be watching it a lot with my kids.
Yes.
And I have a feeling like I'm going to be seeing a lot more Mario movies in the next couple of years. I hope I see a Zelda movie. I hope I see a Metroid movie. And I don't even play those games. I don't play Zelda or Metroid at all. But I think they're cool characters. And I hope we get more Mario stuff. You know, I mean, I'm down for whatever, honestly, as long as, you know, and I'm with you. And I do want more. Like, I want more character arcs. I want deeper stuff like that. And maybe they can kind of grow with the audience. And it's kind of like you know, maybe they can be like, okay, these kids are 5 or 6 now, and they'll be 8 or 9, they'll be 12, 13, and maybe the stakes can increase and we can get kind of like an Infinity War kind of situation. And maybe not. Maybe they'll just always want to keep it that level. That way they're always introducing, because they got us. They got the 30-year-olds. Like,
they do.
We were
and
born
got our
into
kids.
this time period.
And like the kids below, there's no
they got us all. And so it's like, then maybe they don't have to go super dark, because even if the 30-year-old doesn't want to go, your 5-year-old's gonna be like begging you or crying if you don't take them. So it's like, and you're like, well, it's Mario. I played Mario for 20 years. I'll go watch it, you know? So it's like, I could watch worse things, you know?
Yeah. And I think it is one of those things, if you've played video games at all, you probably have some affiliation with Mario, whether you played it at a friend's house, whether you just, you know, played a game or two, even if you're not like, I mean, there are people that like you that like only buy Nintendo when there's new Mario games, like, and that like people that just think Mario games are the greatest games that have ever existed. And I get it to a degree. But yeah, no, I think like this movie has something for everyone. And I think to that, it deserves credit. I did find out, you were right, there's only 5 needle drops. According to this article on Enemy, it was Holding Out for a Hero, Take on Me, Thunderstruck, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and Mr. Blue Sky. Which again,
it was weird here Mr. Blue Sky. We just heard it in Guardians.
It was, and part of me was thinking, I was like, well, I don't know, like For some reason, Guardians, I love the soundtrack of both of those movies, and those don't feel the same for me. And part of it is because it's like integrated into the world. Like we're listening to these songs because these are the songs on Peter Quill's mixtape that he got from his dying mom. And so it's like this kind of thing where you're like, this makes, and he was an 80s kid at the time. So you've got all these like 80s ballads and hits, and it's amazing. And I agree. It's just kind of this thing of like, well, the final song of Mario's Mr. Blue Sky, and that has nothing to do with the movie other than the sky is blue and we won. You know what I mean? And it's just those kind of needle drops are just a little bit like, it's just hard not to roll my eyes a little bit. Just be like, okay, well,
I get it. No, I get it. There's always a weird balance too. I think of like when you hear a song pop up in a movie, it's like, okay, how long now do I have to wait to like use that song again in another movie? Like,
sure,
there has to be some like general consciousness there. Like for me, when Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania came out, they played "Welcome Back, Kotter," the song from the show "Welcome Back, Kotter," and I was like, I've been waiting for like 10 years to make a movie so I can use that song. And I was like, damn it. Like, first time it's using 40 years, not have to wait like 20 years for I can even think about using it again.
Well, apparently
so, like,
not, because I mean, Mr. Blue Sky was in Guardians 1, which was 2013. Well, it's 10 years. Damn. 2013, I think, was Guardians 1, wasn't it? Guardians 2 was Blue Sky.
Yeah,
which was like 17 or 2017 or 18.
Sky.
Like 2017.
2017.
Yeah. So it's only been 7 years.
It may be 2016.
Maybe that's the list. Maybe that's the rule.
Damn,
7 years.
It's been that long since Guardians 2. That makes no sense to me.
No.
We got Guardians 3 in like 3 weeks. Speaking of which, real quick, and we'll end this. The soundtrack for 3 is out, and I've refused to look at a single song because I don't want to know. I want to know. I want to watch the movie, and then I want to feel it in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I love the soundtracks to those, and Guardians 1 is great because it's story related, and Guardians 2, like all those songs are more thematic to what's happening in the moment.
Yes, and you could get yourself spoiled a little bit potentially with the music, but I think it's an interesting thing with this new Guardians movie. I think we all pretty much, at least if you're tuned in at all to the Guardians, to the stories, and just the little rumblings, I think we all have a pretty good idea of where it's headed with a certain character. I'm not going to spoil it in case you want to go in completely blind, listeners, but we all know kind of who this last movie's about, and we kind of all have a pretty good idea of what's at least going to happen at some point in the movie. So I don't want any other information if I can.
I mean, spoilers, everybody. I have no information. I don't know anything. I don't think Rocket's going to die.
Oh, I do.
I think Drax is going to die. I think Bradley Cooper is a voice, and I think that you can have him in 10 more Avengers movies if you wanted to.
You're right. I mean, like I see what you're saying. Like at a practical level, from a studio producing point of view, you're right that Rocket makes way more sense to keep on because Dave Bautista doesn't want to do Drax anymore, and you can get Bradley Cooper for way cheaper. He said he doesn't. I mean, it seems like he's kind of done with Marvel after this too. He's kind of, from his comments.
No, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't want to do it. He said he's not doing it. He's done. Like, this is his last time ever playing the role. Like, and it makes sense that like you keep on Bradley Cooper, who you can hire for 2 days and do all his lines, and it's way cheaper. All this kind of stuff. But from a story perspective, and I hope that this is James Gunn, and he's got to have a little more free reign than most people. Like, I do think that potential. I don't even know if the listeners can hear you.
Oh, yeah, you're frozen, but I can hear you now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Maybe I'm singing.
Had some technical issues this episode, listeners. We do apologize for that. There seems to be some Xfinity outages in my area.
And he's back.
Yes. Okay, I covered for it.
I was singing the whole time about
I heard little bits of it.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But anyway, what I was saying is I think
you're right.
The more interesting story is a tragic ending for Rocket, because I think this is going to be a pretty heart-wrenching movie for him, which I'm looking forward to. But you're right to say that, like, if I'm an executive, I don't want that to happen. But if I'm James Gunn, I probably do, and I'm hoping he had more power.
I'm singing again. Everyone's not going to be wondering, Donovan, your singing voice is so amazing.
Yes.
Why don't you become a singer, a professional?
Well, listeners,
And I say to you, I can't sing worth a damn.
there he is.
Oh, hey,
He's
Daniel.
back. He's back. Listeners, I think it's a good idea that we go ahead and wrap up this podcast now because the universe, aka Xfinity Internet, has decided it's time. So, Donovan, are you still here?
And
can you hear me?
he's gone.
Okay.
And he's
Okay.
gone.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna text Donovan. Okay.
And he's gone.
I'm gonna outro
Daniel
the
Wingfield
pod.
is gone.
Stop singing. Okay.
If it was doing both of us, there he is. I
Okay.
heard him.
Did you see my
Hey, real quick. I didn't see your chat. bit.ly/2for1mail. My name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield. You almost said it for me.
We've spoken.